Talk Radio, you're in to all things music.
This is Going to Get Loud, the working musician's ultimate guide to striking a new path through today's music industry. With your host, Paul Nicholas.
Hey, welcome everybody. It's going to get loud today. I am Paul Nicholas. We're here with Mr. Jason Barnes. Jason, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Jason is the son of the legendary Don Barnes from 38 Special. We actually had him on my first show a couple of months back, but Jason works with us at Showslinger. He's the head of A&R, so he's finding amazing talent for artists that we're working with across the country for certain venues. But he's also a working comedian and has been in the industry for a long, long time. So today we're talking about comedy, comedians, and how to break into the business. Jason, tell us a little bit about the experience that you have in the comedy scene.
All right, well, I grew up in music, so a lot of the music was the stress of going and doing a show, and then afterwards was the relaxing and the fun and the funny part, and I learned a lot of humor from that. So I wanted to go and I wanted to work in the comedy business, and I ended up going to Atlanta and working for the Punchline Comedy Club, just starting off on the door there. And then slowly but surely working my way in and getting more stage time and gaining the trust of the owner. And then before I know it, I was working with a lot of top comedians of the day, and I was doing a lot of shows and traveling around and doing a lot of road gigs, mostly in the South, but here and there. But I got to work with a bunch of great guys. But, the comedy game is, I think today I think it's kind of gone the way of jazz in the sense that the boom of what it is, especially stand-up, but the boom of what it is kind of flatlined a little bit because it's not a boom anymore. And I think that online has a lot to do with that. But in general, the hard work it takes to go out there and do it each day and the money's never changed. So I don't know if I answered too much there, but that's in the gist.
Okay, before we completely dishearten all of our listeners, we want to give them a little bit of a taste of what it takes to get into the business. There's a lot of people that come up to you, they come up to me, and we talk to a lot of venues that are doing comedy and this kind of thing. And so, we've got a lot of artists that are coming up to us and saying, look, sure, I think I'm funny. I want to get into the game. How do I make it happen? Now, you've worked over the past years with, guys like Doug Stanhope and Dave Attell, Kevin Nealon, Tim Wilson, Tom Rhodes, Amy Shcumer, who's blown up now, Rob Schneider and Joe Rogan, those kind of guys. And so you've seen a lot of, the heyday of the big guys and what's going on in the scene now. So tell me a little bit about, what it takes for a comedian starting out. What's the first thing these guys should do if they want to start getting into the scene?
The first thing you do is go find the closest place that does comedy and do the open mic. I mean, that's just you have to. That's the only way you're going to get to do anything.
Now, are some open mics better than others, or is it just, find the nearest dive? It doesn't matter what it is.
You want to do anything and everything, but mainly to find the biggest comedy club that's nearest you and do that one. Because that generally means that's where the bigger headliners are coming through, and you'll get more experience by working with that. But, stand-up is definitely starting off as just getting into open mics. And how you get stage time, really, the best thing to do is hang out at that place. Find the best comedy club you can find and hang out at that place. Because the only way you're going to get on stage is just keep putting your face in front of somebody, and they'll see you enough times, and they'll actually give you time. That's the only way I know that I've seen how people actually can do it.
So it's not the same as an artist where it's like they just shoot an email with their, their EPK, their press kit saying, hey, here's some photos, here's some videos, we want to play here. I mean, comedy, you don't have the same kind of thing. And if you're a guy just starting out, you probably don't have a solid video in front of a ton of people. So you recommend just going up there, talking to the venue owner, getting close with all the employees and that kind of stuff. Is that what you did at the Punchline there?
That is what I did. Sure. I mean, I was actually able to work in the restaurant business, so I was capable of getting a job there. I was able to bartend and do things like that. So I actually had skills. So I actually got a job. But most of the guys that started there, I just started on the door. Just work the door. It's nothing. You get paid nothing, but you get to hang around the scene and see how the whole thing works. And it's definitely different than being a musician where you can practice with your guys in a band in a garage for a year and then go and present it to somebody. But stand-up pretty much starts on stage. I mean, you have to write some stuff, but you got to get on stage. It's the only way you're going to know if it's any good or not.
And so explain to the people out there who are getting into the scene, you know, what to expect. You're going to do an open mic. How much time are these guys getting? How do they prepare for it? You know, when are they getting to the venue? What should they be doing when they get off the stage? Can you kind of explain the process of, you know, the first couple of gigs?
It's 3 minutes usually. I mean, that, you know, you're probably in a lineup of about 10 guys, and it moves very quickly. You have a host. Chances are, probably because it's an open mic and nobody really comes to the open mics much, so a chance for there's going to be about 10 or 15 people out there, and they're usually there for a friend or two. And, you know, it's a lot of fun to make people laugh, of course. So it's really about, of course, you're freaked out because you've never done it before. And you know, you have to overcome stage fright. And the only way to do that is to get on a stage. But, you know, starting off, you're going to get very little time and very little recognition. My recommendation would just be to write as much as possible, because you can write for a year and only get 3 or 4 minutes out of it, especially being new. So you got to get up there, you got to write a bunch, and then perform as many times as you can in any crappy little wherever the hell it is, and get on that stage too. And then it's a slow grind. You start to get better at it, you know, just like anything in life. So those are the first steps as far as I'm concerned, you know.
Once they get off stage, is it, you know, just pack up, leave, get the hell out of there? Do you recommend these guys staying around, you know, like artists do, and shaking every single hand and all that kind of stuff? Because you got a lot of other acts there. Yeah,
of course. I mean, networking is everything. You know, a lot of people don't remember that this is a business. You know, you gotta talk to the people that are in the business. You know, the later you hang out, the more people you'll probably run into. Most people that work in comedy clubs drink. I mean, it's definitely a thing. So, and they all like to hang out too, but you got to get to know people, you know, and it's definitely, you know, as a rock star I know said, it's the more eyes on you, the better. The more you're out there, the more people are shaking your hand, the more people will see you, the better you're going to be. Because it's definitely you got to be out there doing it business. You can't sit around and you can't sit around. You got to get out there and do it. You got to be performing. It's the only way the whole thing works.
Yeah, no, we talked about it, you know, lots of times when you and I were shooting the shit about, you know, comedians that go out there and they just kind of sleep all day or don't really work on their craft, and then they go out and perform at night. But probably not the best way to do it. You've got a lot to do during the day to promote yourself and stuff like that. You know, what are some successful comedians doing to, you know, innovative things that they're doing to promote themselves during the day that you've seen? How can these guys get their name out there other than just on the stage?
I mean, the funny thing is, Paul, is that it wouldn't take that much effort because hardly anybody ever does it. So if you just really did look at it as a business, and, you know, the best things I've seen, of course, you know, with the bigger comedians, you get to do radio and, you know, you go around and do media all day. But the guys that I know that were successful that you've never heard of, you know, they would come in town. You know what they do? The first thing they go is they go hit the clubs, they go hit the mall and pass that. You know, I mean, they go everywhere. I mean, I know comedians that were their own street team. That's just what they did all day. They just went and hit the streets, told a bunch of people. And before you know it, they got 100, 150 people to show up. So, you know, I think a lot of people just it's something that a lot of artists get lost in, and a lot of comics, but most people just want to go make their friends laugh. You kind of have fun on the weekends, but to actually earn a living from this, it's a whole different thing. And as anybody knows, being an artist, it's a business side that you have to grasp. But, you know, that's pretty much where it's at there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we harp on in our show is always, you know, the business aspects and this, that, and the other. And, you know, one of the reasons we're talking about comedians today is because, yeah, they're artists. And we work with comedians on Show Slinger, obviously the platform that you and I have been working on forever, and a lot of different entertainer types, you know, DJs, MCs, and that kind of thing. But the point is it all boils down to the same thing. It's a business. You got to bust your ass during the day. You got to network. You got to be professional, you know, meet the right people, be prepared, work on your craft and all these things. It doesn't matter if you're playing guitar or you're getting on stage and doing comedy and that kind of thing. So because you've been, you know, traveling the country doing this kind of thing, what can people expect if they want to do a road trip? How do people get prepared to get to that point? Because it's everyone's dream, whether you're a musician or comedian or DJ to get on the road. What are the realities of doing that?
That's why I mentioned earlier about if you're going to if you're going to practice at a club, make sure it's a club that has traveling comedians and it's a real comedy club, because that's really the best way I know how to. And that is if you're around that club, that means that there's going to be feature acts coming through. And if those guys find you funny, then they'll show you where the other clubs are in the country. So it's kind of like you kind of got to know somebody type of thing. So the more you're hanging around those kind of people, the better chance you have of getting more gigs outside of your area. Because it's hard to get stuff outside of your area if you're not there. I mean, it's hard to get something in Birmingham if you've never been there. But the only way to get those guys, you get to Birmingham, you find out the guy came from Birmingham to Atlanta to do a feature spot. Now he's going back to Birmingham and he's like, hey man, if you want to come do some time, that's kind of how you start moving to the next level. Like other comedians will find you funny and then they'll take you along with them. And just like with bands, it's the same thing. Like, oh, the guy's pretty good. Let me give him a shot. Yeah. So to just straight out be like, I'm funny and I'm just going to go do the country and just going to call clubs and say, and pass out kits and pass out EPKs. Really, truthfully, I mean, unless you're really good, I mean, it's going to be passed over. People don't really look at that stuff. You got to get something good in their face. And if you're 3 to 5 years in, you really are just still practicing. You're still not even there. Comedy is a hard game, and it's a 10-year. You got to be committed for 8 to 10 years before you really start to get good at it. It takes a long time. It's a long process, but it's worth the ride if you got the youth and the money, and you don't want to sleep in your car and stuff.
Wait a minute. We all want to sleep in our cars. I spent years on the road doing the gig. I mean, and
I don't want to be.
Man, I've slept in the back of my car many times.
Well, no. Well, that's something for 21-year-olds to do. And I don't want to be negative.
I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, I know. It's great to make a room full of people laugh. It's great to make one person laugh, much less 300 people. So it's a beautiful experience, and I don't want to take it away from anybody. If anything, it does. It makes you a stronger person, confidence-wise. It makes you just you learn a lot by being around a bunch of interesting people and making them laugh. It's great for life, business, and everything. So there's definitely upside to it. And I was going to say, too, if you're going to do it, just like a musician, if you're going to be a comic, don't just be a stand-up anymore. You can't do that. It's a new age. You got to have online videos. You got to have improv skills. I mean, if you're going to do it all. That's what I say.
Yeah, and so, let's talk about that in 1 second. I want to circle back to that real quickly. So, everyone's always going to say the same thing. How do I get paid doing this? I mean, and I know that comedians have it 10 times harder just from, you and I talking. When we first met years ago, I didn't know a lot about the comedy game, but then, I started hanging out at the Punchline, seeing what you're doing, working with all these guys. And you had the benefit of being at like the premier comedy club outside of basically New York, Chicago, and LA. I mean, the Atlanta Punchline is it,
Oh, yeah.
Or it was,
Yankee Stadium of the comedy world, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what can these guys expect to earn, when you're doing open mics? Yeah,
sure,
it's pro bono for sure. What can they expect even when they're in a feature slot?
Feature, $500 to $700. Most comedians that are working today, you've never heard of. 95% of this business, if not 98%, is just solid working comedians. And usually if you're an opener, you're going to get $50 to $100. Feature, depending if they're doing a whole weekend, I'm not saying one show. I'm saying if they do a comedy club for the weekend, which is about 6 or 7 shows, you get $500 to $700 for a weekend. And a typical headliner that you've never heard of, probably $1,500 to maybe $2,500, somewhere in there. That's pretty standard. Now, then you get to the next level, which are, a little bit of, they can sell out a room and that kind of thing, but they're fairly new. You can make 10 grand a weekend. I mean, you can move up to that, or you could get up to like a Dave Attell, who's going to sell out 9 shows straight, and you can make 50,000 a weekend. So those are pretty much the levels that I know about. But most of them are just the working class guys. Features making 5 to 7, headliners making $1,500 to $2,500, somewhere in there. So, it's a working man's business. It's not the glamorous Jerry Seinfeld kind of thing. It's mostly comics, hardworking, funny ass guys out there, guys and girls, making a living.
Yeah, and I mean, you see that with musicians, DJs, all these guys. I mean, it's the, less than 1% of people that are, the rock stars and all that kind of stuff doing the thing. The rest are people, like you and me that are grinding it out there, loving what we do. But I think it's important for people to understand the realities and in that kind of thing. I mean, you could do a tour as a comedian and come back, breaking even if you're lucky. Same thing with artists. Now, it's not to be negative on it because it is an investment. If you come back and, you may not have netted any extra money, but guess what? You started building your crowds legitimately and you're getting a lot of social media traction and your crowds start building, then
you got more eyes on you.
Yeah, you got more eyes on you. That is absolutely the investment you have to make. And so, words of wisdom there. If it's 8 to 10 years, that's, something people
that's pretty much,
I'd say the same thing about music, though. I mean, it's not going to be 1 or 2 years. I mean, it's going to be 5 to 10 years before you really start.
It was 10 years for Dad. I mean, it's about that, 8 or 9 at least. Seinfeld made it in about 6. That's fairly, less. But
is that when he actually hit the show, or is that when he started doing?
That was when he kind of got the show and everything. So he'd already been doing it 5 or 6 years by then. So I mean, that's actually a very young comedian to be handling that kind of star power. But another thing I was going to say was about the internet and how it's changed how stand-up and music works. And for music, I don't know how bad it is because, I mean, as we know, it's all about merch and tickets and live shows. But with comedy, I mean, with music, you see a song online and you start to like that song. You go to the show, they better play that song. That's the song that you wanted to hear. You play the song I saw online. It's completely opposite for stand-up because if somebody sees my bit online and then they love it and then they come to the show, well, that's the bit I'm doing. And they're like, hey, I already heard that. It's like, no, that's the act. I can't. It's a weird thing for people to like. Yeah, I already heard that. Well, that's my act.
It's the inverse of music. We want to hear the stuff that we've never heard before. But I want to get back into that on the next segment. We're going to take a quick break here, but I want to talk about digital and how it's affected comedians in particular, because like you just hit on right there, it's created some really dramatic changes, and we're going to get into that in 1 second. It's Tuesday, 420. Jason Barnes, comedian extraordinaire, with us here, and we're going to be back after we pay a couple of bills on It's Going to Get Loud. Come back.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is going to get loud. The working musician's ultimate guide to striking a new path through today's music industry. With your host, Paul Nicholas.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We got Jason Barnes here, a working comedian, the son of legendary singer Don Barnes from 38 Special. Jason's worked with a number of A-list comedians over the years, and we're talking about how to help comedians bust into the scene. It's a bit of a quirky thing. Jason's helping us shed some light on it. Now, before the break, we were talking a little bit about digital media, the internet, etc., how it's changed things for comedians quite dramatically. And so, Jason, you were saying that, you know, it's a totally different thing now with the rise of digital media because you can see and hear what comedians are doing before you get to the show. It's not a surprise anymore. How do comedians stay ahead of the curve? How do they maintain their originality when people already kind of know what to expect when they get there?
Well, it goes back to a simple thing, and that is that a bit or a chunk of material of 2 minutes, let's say, that takes about 6 months to work on. I know it sounds crazy that 2 minutes of material takes 6 months, but you got to go do it about 100-something times to get it tight and good. So why you see a lot of comedians today, especially the hardworking earning comics, they don't want anybody filming anything because if somebody puts one of those bits online, then now everybody has seen that bit and it's really not even finished. Then when they come to the show, they think that they already saw that. So they have to protect that. And that's why you see so much of that now, because it just doesn't work like music. Music is like, get it out there, let people hear it so they'll come see you. This is more like, if you're new, it's tough. A lot of comedians, let me go back. The old mantra was basically you worked on 45-minute act and you carried that 45-minute act with you for the rest of your life. That was your act. That was it.
Like Rodney Dangerfield right there. Boom. 30 years of the same one-liners over and over and over.
Okay, now the new way to do thing, the way that Louis C.K. is doing things, the way a lot of other bigger comedians, Doug Stanhope does it, is they write a new act every year, one a year. And it takes about a year to develop one act, 145 minutes to an hour. And then on January, as Doug would do, he would completely dump all that material and start completely over. So it's just, you're constantly working that stuff out, and it's something you have to protect because people will see it, and then they'll think, hey, you already did that. It's just not fair to them.
Yeah, for sure. And so, what can people do to stay ahead of the curve? If you're a working comedian, you're just trying to get out there. You've been working on that, 2 to 5 minutes for a while. Is it something where maybe they create the core of their act, okay, but you've also got a lot of things that you're doing, on social media or videos that you're creating outside of that to help kind of not only reinforce your brand, but get the buzz out even more. Is that something that, people can do?
Yes, definitely. I mean, if that's what I said earlier. If you're going to do this game, then you got to put all the irons in the fire. You got to be good on everything. You definitely want the funny videos, definitely doing improv stuff. You want to be able to have good act outs. You want to be able to be a all around good comic because there's a lot of avenues, and all of those things will help. But what I've seen in coming up in the comedy business, and that is, it's just not like that. It's a very definitive thing. Like you're either an improv comic or you're a stand-up comic. It's almost like two camps completely. But you're starting to see them cross over a little bit more, especially from the stand-up side, because learning how to be and do act outs is better for you. It heightens your stand-up. You're just one-man show kind of thing. So
seems like to me you got to be the jack of all trades, like you said. You've got the Jerry Seinfelds, who are the last of the real classic stand-up comedians. But it's almost like what actors and musicians have been doing for years. Okay, I'm a musician, but I'm also an actor. I'm also a producer. I'm also all these different things. Hey, I'm a comedian, but I'm also getting into the acting gig, and like you said, putting all those irons in the fire. If somebody's really hardcore on just doing stand-up, is that something that you would recommend for them to refine their craft, or take acting classes and do all that kind of other stuff? Because as a musician, I would tell people to focus on their core proficiency. You are a guitarist. Do the best that you can with that. before you even think about spreading yourself too thin or branching out into something else?
It's very separate in that. Like I said, there's improv, and there's guys that do improv. There's guys that are actors / stand-up. There's guys that just do stand-up, which was pretty much me. Just more of a social commentator is what that's my shtick. But there's all kinds that do all types of things, and you definitely want to be able to. It just nowadays you want to be able to have something in all. I think the point is that funny is really what the goal is. It doesn't matter how you get there. You just got to be funny. And if it means having bigger, and nowadays stand-ups are more in tune with what they should be doing. I guess they're a little bit more, there's a lot more information out there for a stand-up to be able to do their craft. And that's another thing too. It's not just talking on a stage. There's an actual craft to it that you need to learn how to write and how things work with rhythm. And you find a lot of comedians are drummers because it's really about 75% timing and about 25% writing. It's really about how you deliver a joke compared to how funny the words were.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Most comedians are drummers because it's all about rhythm. Anytime you hear an actor, a comedic actor or comedian talk about it, they always say their timing, their comedic rhythm. That guy's timing was insane. And so how would you tell the guys that are coming up, who do they study? Who's the master of timing? How can they prepare for that? How can they study it? How can they get themselves, better when it comes to that delivery, that punchline? I mean, it's everything. I mean, it's what Seinfeld has spent decades on, that one perfect line. How can these guys prepare themselves?
In all truthfulness, listening to the blues is good. And I mean, listening to really slow beats and learning how to stay in a pocket. The funny thing that makes people make jokes about stand-up is that the less it looks like you don't give care at all, the less it looks like you don't care, the better it is. Like people that are relaxed and just it's kind of just dripping off of you. You're not excited to be talking to these people. They want it slow and delivered and deliberate. And, a lot of the greats, of course, I mean, Anthony Jeselnik that's working today, he's amazing time. He delivers time amazing. He just got it down to a science. Some guys are really slow and they just know how to drop the bomb. And there's definitely, like I said, it's like a song. When I write comedy, my writing is more like the back of a CD. It's like in little verses because you want to cut out all the fat. You just want to say the things that matter. And it's really just like a song. Every bit and chunk is just like a song. You cut out everything that doesn't matter and you get to the meat and then you make sure that the timing is right, which it's usually, a pause between the setup and the punch. You got to deliver that correctly.
Yeah, and that's something that we've talked about in the past, and I love that analogy. It's just like music because, when you're writing a bit for stand-up, you can do it a variety of different ways. But when I write a song, it's kind of stream of consciousness. I just play it as it feels right in my head and this, that, and the other. Then you put it down. Whether you write it down, the chord changes, lyrics, whatever, or you actually track it, and then you go back and listen and you say, was that note really necessary? Did it really help get my message across? Did that extra word really help get that lyric across, or is it just fluff? And then trim the fat off of that thing. And I love that analogy.
Same thing. Exactly. So there's a real art to it, just like that. A lot of people think you're just up there talking. And I think I thought that for years as growing up, like Robin Williams is a great example. You just think like, he's just saying that right off the top of his head. He's amazing. Like, no, that guy wrote and practiced. And, it took a long time to get that good. You can just walk out and start doing that. So it's kind of stand-up used to be more of an illusion, like, hey man, this guy's just funny and smart right off the top of his head. I think more people nowadays realize it's a real art. It takes a lot of work to get to that point. There's a lot of work involved to do that. I mean, tons and tons and years of it to get something tight. And just every time you deliver it, it's just a home run, standing ovation. It takes years to do that stuff. But it's worth the ride. And writing is a great thing. It's fun and it's a good exercise. Everybody should write stuff. And it's a great escapism.
Well,
I love it.
I always said that being an artist, writing a song, writing comedy, even just writing stories, whatever it is, I always said that it's cheaper than a therapist and safer than drugs. a good
and
way to really work out what's going on.
It's a really cool escapism. Simple as that. I mean, every time I write, I don't think about anything else but the writing, and that's the whole idea. It's healthy for your brain.
Now, comedians I know are not particularly dark people. They're all sunny and happy and that kind of thing, right? So there's nothing they got to work out, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's most of the side of comedy is dark. Funny comes from tragedy. So you got to you got to live the tragedy, be in the tragedy, and then the light comes in the funny. I mean, nobody wants to hear. It's a weird thing that people are, and nobody wants to hear the best thing that's ever happened to you. They want to hear the most strangest, weirdest, twisted tale you got. And that's just, it's more interesting. And if you could put some funny on top of that, then it really, really, I think Pryor was great at that because he was such a bare your soul, say whatever it is you got to say on stage, and just to really show people. Like, I've never seen a comedian since. I mean, he's obviously the god of my people, but I've never seen a comedian since that has been so just it's all out in the open. It's all out there. I mean, he talked about being gay. He talked about a lot of stuff, growing up in a brothel and all that stuff. And he's bearing all that tragedy and then turn it into funny. And then for us to enjoy it. And God, it was funnier than some of the stuff I'd ever heard in my life at that time.
I think that's one of the really impressive things to me about comedy is the ability to do that. Now, in music, I always felt that when I wrote songs, it felt like a public confession. I was raised Catholic, although I'm not Catholic, but I was raised that way. And a big part of that is confession. I always felt like being on stage was like a public confession. This is me. This is all the good and mostly all the bad. But as a musician, you can still mask a lot of things. You can still hide behind melodies. You can still hide behind flowery language and alliteration and wordplay and that drum solo or that guitar riff at just the right time. But as a comedian, you don't have anywhere to hide. It's you, a damn microphone, and a spotlight.
Well, that's something I always told my dad. Said,
it really takes some big balls to do that.
Something I told my dad was that, that time when you're a musician, on stage when everything's going good, the sound's good, the crowd's there, oh, this is going to be great, and then the power goes out. And now you've got it. Now you can't hide behind those instruments anymore. And somebody on stage has to say something. So it's usually, the singer, like, hey guys, we're having a power outage. It's still going to be a party. And you're freaked out because it's all new. And you're not used to just going out there and saying something. You've practiced everything. And I told my dad, I said, that moment, that's what a stand-up lives in, is that awkward, weird moment where you got to just go out there and start talking. And then hopefully they eventually will come around to you, but it's just you and the crowd, and it could go crazier than hell. I've seen it go completely bonkers upside down, or I've seen people in tears because of their laughter, and hurting. So it could go either way, but that's funny you mentioned that.
I think when the power goes out, musicians in their bag of tricks, they've got, I think, only two phrases that they can bust out. One is everybody having a good time? And the other is everybody drinking tonight? I think that's the go-to for any up and coming musician. Everyone having a good time.
Yeah. You got nothing planned for that. Well, I was at one of Dad's shows, and it was a big stadium, and the power went out, like a big 20,000 seater. And Ted Nugent was opening, and Dad was on stage, and the power went out.
Ted Nugent didn't shoot the sound guy or shoot the backstage crew.
No, but it was back when he wore the loincloth. And all of a sudden, he came running out of nowhere. He just had the loincloth on and a flashlight. He was the only person in the building with a flashlight. And he was jumping all over the place like some kind of crazy Tarzan guy. But that's what he did when the lights went out.
Oh, my goodness. I cannot erase the image in my head of Ted Nugent running around with a flashlight in a loincloth. That in and of itself sounds like that was
his
like some
sketch.
kind of
it was funny
sketch they do on Saturday Night Live or something.
Yeah, that happened. But yeah, that moment, that's the moment. That's what stand-up is, and but it's like grabbing hold of a tiger's tail. Sometimes you can hang on, sometimes it goes great, and sometimes the thing will get away from you. And, it's just so much unpredictability in it, but that's part of the fun. If it was predictable, it wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you have to really you got to have a hide that's thicker than a rhino. I mean, even more than a musician, because a musician, again, you can always fall back on, say you were doing an original show and things were going right to hell. You can always fall back on that Skynyrd cover. You can always fall back on that Beatles cover or whatever. I myself have had to fall back on the old Sublime cover from time to time when, you're choking and nobody's paying attention or whatever. But you just can't do that as a comedian. You got to get comfortable living in that space of, oh God.
And you have to win. That's the thing. You have to win, even if it means you being mean. You have to run the show. Once the
hold on now, because
to win, then you're going to lose.
What happens when you pull a Kramer, a Michael Richards?
Well, I mean, he went crazy. But those people he was yelling at, I'm going to say they were being kind of assholes too. So, but he just went nuts. But
yeah, but I mean,
don't think
that's the comedy game.
I mean, that was tough. But
unlike musicians, I mean, people will say crappy things to you as a musician from time to time, but usually most people are pretty cool. But like people that go to see a comic, they're out with a bunch of buddies, they're out with their girlfriend. They think it's cool to heckle the comic, and so you gotta have that quick wit. You got to be ready to just completely crush these guys. Otherwise, you just look like crap.
Well, like I said, you have to win. You have to win. But then I could say something about him as a stand-up and say he's not a stand-up, and that's where the problem lied. He went out on stage a few times and did some shows. He's not used to dealing with stand-ups deal with day in and day out, and that is having that bag of tricks for some drunk heckler asshole. So he wasn't prepared for that, and obviously he reverted back to a 13-year-old kid. So he just wasn't prepared for that. Now, if that same guy was in the room with Doug Stanhope or Dave Attell, that guy would have been ruined, and the crowd would have been laughing, and they would have probably left in shame. But that's a profession.
Yeah, for sure. No, I completely understand. I mean, I personally, I love it when people heckle comedians because they've got they've heard it all. They got the fastest comebacks, and they're just going to absolutely crush. Like, I mean, it's part of the routine, right? Like you expect somebody to get up there and try and think they're going to stump the comic and this, that, and the other. And then usually they just get lit up. I saw someone try and do that to Dave Attell when we were hanging out there, and he was playing, and he was just like completely crushed him, which was a lot of enjoyment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. It's enjoyable to watch somebody be mean to somebody else, and especially when they deserve it. It's beautiful. But one thing I wanted to say about comedy, too, is a lot of people are afraid to do it, and that is the heckling. And the point is that most heckling is really a rare occurrence. Most people don't say it. What you're really afraid of is silence. That's a bigger deal.
We're going to get back into it in 1 second. Take a quick break.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every...
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
This is going to get loud. The working musician's ultimate guide to striking a new path through today's music industry. With your host, Paul Nicholas.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We've got Jason Barnes here. We were shooting the breeze on what it's like to be a comedian and what's going on there. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about kind of some funny things that you've seen over the years. There's a lot of stories that you were kind of relating back to me about, man, just what it's like being in the scene and that kind of stuff. I was wondering if any of those come to mind. I mean, I know it's radio, we got to keep it a little bit clean, but you know, what are some hilarious things that you've seen over the years at the Punchline or other gigs that you've done?
I mean, I think a lot of it had to do with the staff more than anything, so you wouldn't know who they were. But I can talk about sometimes I went and did a desert party with Doug Stanhope out there in Death Valley, California. And spending a few days in the desert with Doug Stanhope is definitely a crazy experience. It was
no,
it was just
when you say party in the desert, are you talking about like the Doors movie kind of party in the desert, peyote and Indians naked walking around?
A lot of all of that, and a lot of all that. And there was bands and comics and just living out for 5 days with bands and it's hot as hell. And
wait, and I wasn't invited. Why?
Yeah, right. Well, it was before I met you, but I was on stage. We were performing and stuff out there just for the hell of it for each other. And like I would get on stage and Doug would be like, I'm trying to do jokes and I'm bombing, and Doug's like throwing beer cans and shit at me, and everybody's walking around in costumes, just like Doug at one point was wearing like a banana hammock and a fur coat and a Vikings helmet. And he looked at me
in the middle of the desert.
Like, I don't know why I'm doing this shit. I'm like, you look ridiculous, Doug. But he was just that kind of. He loves to have fun and just get out there and just get as crazy as you can get. And he's a sweetheart, and he just loves to be and have a good time. But
I didn't know you were actually performing out there.
Yeah, we were performing. There was bands and stuff. Oh, it was crazy. But Doug at one point had when I first met him, this was at the Punchline, and he gotten all upset about the hair restoration thing. However, all these men keep wanting to put new hair on their heads, so he on purpose shaved a horseshoe shape into his head, and then he had found this old crappy like wig, but it was like a spider wig, and it didn't even look like a wig. It was like a real stringy kind of thing, and he would walk around with this thing on his head like he did this on purpose. And I just never, that's when I met him. And I thought, this is the craziest person I've ever met in my life.
Now you're telling me
go ahead.
I was going to say, you're telling me he voluntarily did the Roy Munson?
Yeah, he voluntarily did it. Exactly. He did the Roy Munson. That's exactly what it was. Good. I couldn't.
Roy Munson, the title character from Kingpin there with Woody Harrelson, who's got that ridiculous comb over.
He did it on purpose just to mock people with fake hair. And when I met him, I was like, okay, this guy, I could party with this dude. But, it turns out he's one of the, most prolific working comedians today. And most comedians would tell you that. Most stand-ups would tell you that. But there's so many stories. I mean, Dave Attell brings candy every time he would come in. And he's just a sweetheart guy. Gallagher came through one time. We had watermelon squishings everywhere. That guy's a wacko. He's like a
dude. Gallagher.
Go ahead.
I want to hear your story. I was going to say Gallagher is the kind of guy where, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I never met the guy, but he seems like the kind of guy that is that way off stage. Like most musicians, they put on their stage clothes, their stage rig, they perform, they take off their stage clothes. Unless you got a guy like Bono or Steven Tyler, like who they are on stage to in real life. Gallagher seems like that kind of dude. Like he's just a nutbag in real life.
No, he's absolutely. He drives the clubs himself. He shops for his own watermelon, is what I've found. Imagine just be standing in a store and you see Gallagher over there thumping on watermelons. I just think that's funny.
I got to get the right watermelon, man. This thing isn't big enough.
I'll give you an example. It's mad genius. It's crazy, but it's mad genius. The guy's a genius, too smart for anybody. But he had bought, real quick, a pack of male man's briefs, and he cut the crotch out of them, and he was wearing it like a tank top. That's just how he was thinking. I don't know why he was doing that, but that's what he was doing. He had cut the crotch out of underwear and wearing it like a tank top. And then he took his shirt off during the set and thought that was the funniest thing ever.
I got to tell you, and again, I don't have much experience with the comedic world. I know that when I was touring heavily, and I still play, this year I'm doing 200 shows. I still do a lot. But when I was doing a lot of the smaller clubs around the country, a lot of them were either near comedy clubs, like next to them or in them. But we got a lot of comics hanging out at the bar and stuff like that with us, or in the green room before or after the set.
Oh, yeah.
Real dark cats, real interesting people. But I met a prop comic once, and funniest guys in the world. And then I keep thinking the king of all prop comics, Carrot Top. I saw this guy in Vegas at Luxor. I've seen him twice. Probably the funniest shit I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, if you want to see something that's absolutely insane, go see that frickin' guy.
Oh, yeah, I like Carrot Top.
Absolutely freaking brilliant. It's easy to dismiss a guy because he's so insane looking, but yeah.
But he knows how to tap into funny, and that's really all. It's really all that matters in comedy. Is it? Did they laugh? Did they laugh when you did whatever you did? Did they laugh? And you're winning. I mean, it's just that simple. So it goes back to stand-up. Really is it's the last bastion of free speech, and it really just goes back to you can say and do whatever you want to do, but it's such a true art. I don't know who said this, but I was talking about like Pryor. It was Seinfeld. Seinfeld came out after the Seinfeld show had gone down, or had gone down, had ended, and he came out for the first 5 minutes, and then he didn't have any material because he was starting from scratch, and he got heckled. And we were like, "Well, what are you doing here?" And it goes to that thing of, yeah, you might be Jerry Seinfeld, but if you come on stage to do stand-up, you better, they're going to give you a standing round ovation. It's Jerry Seinfeld, but within 5 or 10 minutes, you better have something. You better bring something because they'll lose interest quick. So it's just the truest art form in that sense. Like, yeah, we'll give you all the accolades in the world, but you still better be funny. You still better deliver.
Yeah, and another reason I constantly will always say, as hard as it is being a musician, being a comedian is harder. Because even as, a musician that is moderately successful, think of all the one-hit wonders you've seen over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Better Than Ezra. It doesn't matter what decade they're from. They're going to have one song that they can ride out for 50 years, and that's the reason everyone goes to that show, and that's the reason they can make a living, and that's the reason they still sell out 5,000-10,000 seaters off of one damn song. A comedian cannot ride out one joke.
Ooh, no, not at all. There's very few. I mean, like Larry the Cable Guy or something. I know Ron White. I've been to Ron White's house for Super Bowl and stuff, and he's a great guy. And I mean, his shows are insane. They sit there and repeat the whole thing while he's trying to do it. It's nutty. So sometimes Ron will just love to come and do open mics and stuff and surprise people because they weren't there for him. Once you're a comedian and the whole crowd is there for you and you have your whole fan base, it gets even worse because they all know your stuff. So it's like what he would do was do like 20 or 30 new stuff up front and then give them like 10 of the classics so they can all play along. So it gets weird in that sense.
Well, you still got to give them what they want. I remember I was at the 40 Watt in Athens this one time. This was, oh man, I want to say it was like 2001, 2002. I was still very young in high school, just getting into college, but saw Mitch Hedberg there. And this is a room that holds about 600 people. And this is at the height of his popularity. And I swear, every single, 2 hours of this guy just getting wasted on stage. It must have brought him up 6 bottles of wine. And, he'd make a musician look like a wuss, but every single line, everybody was screaming back in his face.
Yeah.
As much as he stumbled over and meandered over everything.
He would get to the point where he would do half of his act, and then he would lay down and do the whole his act over again. He just laying on the stage. He would completely repeat the act. And just people would just kill because everybody knew the jokes. But
only that guy
he was
could get away with that.
What's that?
Only that guy could get away with that. Now, in that capacity,
oh sure, only he could get away with that,
dude. I wonder if he actually wrote stuff down. Like, could you actually see this guy writing down a joke? Like, I know when I saw him at the 40 Watt, he did have a piece of paper that had jokes scribbled on it.
Of course.
He was so blind drunk that he couldn't even read the paper. So he just like randomly started talking.
It was more than
drinking.
He was a heroin addict as well. So, and it was starting to get him in the end. But it did get him in the end, I should say. But Doug was a good friend of his. He said if he ever got a tattoo, it would be Mitch Hedberg. He said Mitch was just the epitome of a classic, just a badass comedian, and he lived it, But he'll be missed for sure. He was one of the greats. But like you said, everybody knew his jokes, and he was just getting bored with the whole thing. And he also had a drug habit, which is sad. But
yeah, you don't want to live it that hard.
Right before I started doing stand-up, I went and saw it was Dave Attell, Mitch Hedberg, and Louis Black. It was a killer show, man. They were outside. I got Dave to sign my Skanks for the Memory CD, and just a cool moment. And got to meet Mitch and all that. It was right before he died, and it was cool for me because like a year later, I started working with the Punchline and started doing stand-up, and I actually ended up working with Dave and knowing Dave, and it was just fun to like kind of live a little bit of a dream there. But I knew, I saw Mitch live back then, and he was just a beast. God, he was so funny.
That's absolutely hilarious. One of the funny little anecdotes that I have is with Dave Attell. Saw him play at Soldier Field up there at University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia, and this really taught me a lot. Though I was playing a lot of clubs around Athens. It was a big scene. You got Widespread Panic started there, REM, all that kind of stuff, a lot of bands. And I was just getting my feet wet. But nothing taught me more than when I went to see Dave Attell, because this was an outdoor festival he was the headliner. He had one opener. I can't remember the guy's name. He wasn't noteworthy. But this guy gets up there and starts to do 30 minutes. Crowd, drunk, college kids start heckling this guy. And he taught me more in 30 minutes than I guess I learned in the next 5 years of what not to do. This guy starts getting angry and turning on the crowd and trying to yell back at them, not in a funny way, not in a I'll turn this heckle and you smoke you, but just in like almost like a Michael Richards kind of way. And I've never seen hostility like I've seen towards this guy. It was so bad that they actually gave him the hook, like in the old cartoons where they've got the cane and it comes out behind stage and they pull the guy off the stage. That happened to this dude. The actual stage manager, tour manager, whoever came out and actually grabbed the microphone out of his hand and basically let him off stage. Dave Attell, who was supposed to have 10-minute break between sets or whatever, immediately comes out, grabs the mic from the guy who's on the way out, and just turns the crowd from hostile to I'm going to rip this place and riot. Yeah. In 30 seconds, changes it to they're eating out of the palm of his hand. I've never seen control like that outside of like a U2 concert. It was the most phenomenal thing I've ever seen in my life. He's
a master at it. And I could do one better because Doug Stanhope, I know I keep bringing up Doug, but the same way, and I've seen Dave do that too. What those just really master craftsmen, genius comedians do on purpose is they'll ruin the crowd, half of it, and then win them back. It's just like how they like play game. They like playing games with it. I've seen Doug walk half the room. We'll come out to a sold out show, walk half the room for the first 20 minutes. And then as soon as he gets all the people out that he doesn't care about, then he'll kill for like an hour. But they love that bringing them back around thing. They love to like take it down this road to the point of insanity and then bring everybody back to their square peg. And only a few people can do that. Only a few. And Bill Burr, Doug Stanhope, and Dave are basically, those are the top that I've seen out of like handling hecklers and stuff and just controlling out of the palm of your hand. I mean, Burr and Dave are the best. I mean, they're just amazing. It's really fun to watch them play with the crowd. Like you just said. It's really cool.
There was that one time where I've only seen Dave twice. The first was the one I told you, and then the second time was when you and I were hanging out at the Punchline and Dave came down. This was when was it Hurricane Sandy that was in New York?
I think so. Yeah,
he couldn't get out. He got stranded in Atlanta. He was supposed to do a Friday, I think 3 sets on Friday, 3 sets on Saturday. Hurricane or snowstorm or some act of God hit, and he couldn't get on a plane back. So I remember you calling me up and saying, hey, Dave is down at the Punchline. You got to come on out. I came out Sunday. Nobody knew about the show, but Dave Attell's like my favorite comedian of all time. I wanted to see
there was like
go
50
out
people there or something, wasn't it?
No, it was like 20. I mean, there was nobody in the crowd.
There, right?
Small cluster of little people around this guy. And the point I'm trying to make is if you're a band or you're a comic, I don't care how many people there, you kill it. And this guy, like a freaking pro, gets up there and just absolutely crushes the set. And then he was nice enough to come back while he was having a smoke break and talk to us about Showslinger, which was actually pretty cool.
He's a sweetheart, man. Dave is just, he's a sweetheart guy. And there's definitely a difference in comedians, and there's only a few handfuls that are the same person off stage that they are on. And Attell is definitely, he's so funny you can't even talk to him off stage. It's just, it'll hurt you. It's just everything he says is funny. It's ridiculous. And stand-up
totally nice.
The same way, and a lot of those guys are the same way. Just you can't even talk to him. It's so funny. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that was something that I thought was really, really cool. Because I used to watch, Insomniac and all that kind of stuff, Dave Attell's show. And it was one of the most brilliant shows. I wish it went on for many seasons.
I'm a huge fan as well. I mean, he just has the perfect amount of self-loathing and smarts that he could get away with saying anything to anybody.
Self-deprecating humor while being awesome about it, and not like a total, shyster kind of, woe is me. But on that anecdote, I'm gonna wrap it up. Jason Barnes, thank you so much for coming out. Jason, a working comedian. We're gonna do a little blog post, and we got some words of wisdom we got to get out to you folks. So check it out on showslinger.com/show. Scroll down to the blog; it'll be up there tomorrow. It's gotten loud. It's going to get loud again next week. We've got some great guests lined up. Make sure you guys come out and check it out. This is Paul Nicholas signing off from Enter Talk Radio. Have a good day.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.